Hello Year 6, welcome to week number 6 of our Pi Corbett weekly lessons. We are on Skyship Adventure part number 3, which we will be continuing today following on from our story. So what I would like you to do first of all, before we even get going, is get up your 2 other bits of your story and I would like you to read them. So pause the video here and just do that quickly. Okay, so by now you should have reread your story. If you haven't done that, you really cannot continue with this lesson. It's really, really imperative that you know where your story ended so that you can continue it. Okay, so today's piece of writing is that you're going to write the next section, which only really needs to be a paragraph, for your Skyship Adventure, where the purpose is to develop 2 contrasting main characters. So you've already got your main characters, now you just need to show further that they differ. So a couple of objectives. So to write a variety of descriptive sentences that introduce a character, showing what they're doing and suggesting how they think, and begin to build a character through name it, so saying specifics, dropping in description with a relative clause using our commas to mark the relative clause, and tagging on an action, possibly hinting at how they feel. Okay, things to remind you that you've learnt so far. You must use accurate punctuation. You must use concrete images to describe details. So use your senses. What did you hear? What did you see? Etc. Each word earns its place. Don't just write for the sake of writing. Think what word would be best to write there. Use alliteration, similes and metaphors to build pictures, personification to add atmosphere, and name it. So Mr. Jabbers, don't write the man or King Street. No, don't write the man, write King Street instead of the road. So be specific and name the thing. Okay, so here is a saying: the characters are the key to the story. They unlock the plot. They make it happen. So that's a saying by Betsy Byers. So to create an engaging character, these are different things that you could do. So have a quick look through. Okay, so those are all different types of things that you can do to create an engaging character. Right, here we have 2 different characters. So you can see they're very different in appearance. In particular, they're from different ages. So what you could do is you need to imagine how each character is feeling and thinking about how they would move or what they might do. Pi Corbett did talk you through this, so it's continuing from that. You need to think about how you can make these 2 characters different, how you can make them contrasting. By doing that, it creates tension or conflict. Right, so in order to do that, to do this paragraph, these are things that you need to be thinking. Okay, you need to name your character, you need to drop in a little description and think about how your character feels. So these are for that structure is for each individual sentence when you want to use a relative clause. Okay, and here are some examples. So what we have is we've got relative pronouns here of who, whose, which and that, and then you've got different character traits here. So you can show what your character is like by showing, not telling. Okay, so don't say who was happy, say who had a smile on their face. Okay, thinking about making sure that you're showing that the character is acting in a certain way to indicate they're a particular type of person or how they're feeling. Okay, so we've got name your character. So the name of our character is Ben. So Ben is here, that's Ben. Okay, so Ben and is glaring at the owl as it spoke. Okay, Ben glared at the owl as it spoke. That is the main clause. It makes sense on its own. What we're then doing is using our relative clause following our noun. We are describing Ben. So Ben, whose hair sprouted in flaming curls, glared at the owl as it spoke. So you've named the character, Ben, you've dropped in a little physical description using a relative pronoun, and you've continued your sentence, okay? Your sentence is Ben glared at the owl as it spoke. The detail here is additional. It should not change the sentence. That's the sentence, okay? So the red is the sentence, Ben glared at the owl as it spoke, and that's your relative clause, which is marked by our 2 commas either side. So using our toolkit. So we've got Mrs. Majika sighed as the snow fell. So Mrs. Majika sighed as the snow fell. To do the B part, you've got to drop in that little bit of description. So Mrs. Majika, whose skin wrinkled like a ploughed field, sighed as the snow fell. So you're dropping in a bit of physical description. What does Mrs. Majika look like? She's obviously got very wrinkled skin, okay, because she's older. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be writing a scene suggesting how your character feels through their behaviour. We're going to look at Pye Corbett's main paragraph as the model, but you can draw on other things that you also know, but it's just a good idea to read back through what he's done because he's modelled where we're going next. You need to look at the way that he builds the character. So naming the character, using physical description, thinking about how the character feels and showing this through how they move. So whether they tiptoe or they charge, shows you a bit about the character. Somebody tiptoeing might be a bit more of a nervous character, and somebody charging might be a bit more of a bolshy, brave character. Okay, so this was the last paragraph of The Stargazer, part 2. So 20 minutes later, the children found themselves alone on board the Stargazer. Captain O'Shea and the crew had already left in search of materials to mend the balloon, leaving strict instructions that the children should not leave the ship. Ty and Mariana stood on deck, staring into the encroaching darkness. A few stars had appeared and a purple moon glowed above them. At that moment, they heard something, so it was left on a cliffhanger. I'm just going to reiterate this again. Please ensure that you have reread your text and story so far that you know the next part follows and adds cohesion. If you haven't, then please stop here and do that. Okay, so here is Pye Corbett's next paragraph. It is literally a paragraph, but it's high quality and every word has earned its place. So, episode 3, new crew member. Something was crawling up the side. 1 second. Something was crawling up the side of the skyship's wooden hull. I just want to note, Skyships has an apostrophe because it's the hull of the skyship. So it's possessive apostrophe. We're not doing that brilliantly yet either. Ty, whose face paled, shrank back and ducked down but behind the tiller. But Mariana rushed to the edge and peered into the gloom below. She could just make out something or somebody scrabbling up the side of the ship. It was quite small and had green eyes. It paused and stared back up at her. "It's a baby dragon," she called. "And it's hurt." Mariana, whose brow frowned with concentration, reached down to grip its outstretched paw and pulled it onto the deck. "It must have got hurt in the storm." The dragonlet was shivering with cold and whimpering. Ty dashed off to fetch a ship's blanket. Okay, as you can see, that is the next part. So today's job is very much for you to write a quality paragraph. It doesn't need to be huge, but it needs to be high quality, thinking about all of those different things that show you what the character is like. So in there we've got some relative clauses. Okay, Ty, whose face paled, shrank back and ducked down behind the tiller. Then we've got Mariana, whose brow frowned with concentration, reached down to grip its outstretched paw and pulled it onto the deck. So they're just extra bits of information and description of what you can see their faces like, that is helping to give an image of each character. What I really like that Pye Corbett suggested doing was using this word but. So you've got Ty, whose face paled, shrank back and ducked down behind the tiller. But Mariana rushed to the edge and peered into the gloom below. It shows the difference between the characters. That's going Ty, whose face paled, shrank back and ducked down behind the tiller because he's nervous, okay, with the situation that's going on. However, Mariana rushes to the edge and peers into the gloom below. Why is she doing that? That's because it's in her nature. She's more adventurous. So using but there is a really strong word, and it's one that we've used since Key Stage 1. However, it's to contrast the characters. So try and see if you can use the word but when relating to the actions of two different characters, okay? And notice I'm saying the actions of two different characters. So what's happening in your story in the next paragraph that's going to show the contrast between two different characters. In order to make a character seem real, you need to think about how they're feeling and show that through what they do, okay? So it might be what they look like or their actions. So here are, and you've got a sheet to help support you with this. So for example, if they're afraid, their body might be shivering or quaking, hands shaking, heart pounding, knees like rubber, fast breathing, teeth clattering. If they're shocked, mouth wide open, eyes popping out, heart beating fast. If they're excited, their heart might be beating fast, they might be clapping their hands, jumping up and down, mouth open, etc. Then here we've got, if they're nervous and afraid, those are good ones to use. Butterflies in stomach, stuttering, lump in throat, playing with hair. You could say this about the characters. You could say, Tai, who was whimpering, Tai, who was whimpering, stared at the oncoming attack, something like that. But use a physical description to help with that. These can be really, really helpful. I've done a job for you here, so use them. Just literally take the different phrases and pop them into your paragraphs. Here's an example of a piece of writing, and we're just going to read this. It's not the best, you can all do better, but it just shows how you can create two different contrasting characters. So again, some ideas where one could be bossy, one could be shy, one could be angry, one could be gentle, etc. So, the wind was howling like an injured animal. A soft creak sounded at the rotten door of the battered shack. Harry, who was still trying to doze off on the floor, could barely hear it and kept it out of his mind. Hopefully you've just realised that that is the relative clause, with a relative pronoun of who. 10 minutes later, he heard a heavy thud. Harry finally decided to open the door and saw nobody. He closed the door. "Hey, open the door," hissed a voice behind the door. He opened it again. "Down here," snapped a tiny figure. So think about the effectiveness of using the word snapped. He was amazingly tiny, with tufts of grey hair on his head. He had ears the size of bowls and eyes that were like fireflies. He wore a dapper black velvet waistcoat and black beetle tap shoes. "I've been waiting for 10 minutes, he shouted as he shoved Harry's legs and stormed in, although his feet made no noise. So there's two contrasting characters here. One's quite bossy and impatient, and Harry isn't reacting to that. He seems quite calm with the situation. Okay, so hopefully yours, as I said, it just needs to be of that quality, but make every word count. You're writing one paragraph to continue your story. Obviously something needs to happen in the story, but you need to be describing your characters' actions to show what they're like as characters. You can use those to help you. Please do. Don't waste your time. These are high quality, so use them. Other things to remember that we've learned in different sessions: name it, draw on the senses so that the reader can imagine the scene, reread to make ideas flow, create fresh images, not cliches, say it aloud, choose every word with care, avoid repeating words and reread to police your sentences, pretend you are your teacher. What will we tell you to change? So quality over quantity. What I mean by that is I'd much rather one succinct, small, high quality paragraph instead of a page of nonsense and you having not thought about your writing, okay? You have to begin to, your main purpose is that you build a character through naming it, dropping in description with a relative clause and tagging on an action, possibly hinting at how they feel. Don't forget to include some relative clauses, show not tell to indicate the character, use but to show a contrasting character within a sentence, and this one we're going to talk more about tomorrow. Okay, let me know if you need any help, but the ideas you have, it's just now about you telling us and showing us what your characters are like. I'm here if you need any help. Thank you very much. Bye.